please use your smartphones or that link. I should put the link in the chat. To do it works as the registration form and also tests your knowledge in advance. Just going to put the link in the chat as well. Just put the link in the chat there for this initial quiz, just to test your knowledge, just while we're waiting for the last few people to attend.
Hi, Naomi. I have a question, please.
Yes, of course.
Yes, I was at the training yesterday at the Highwaycombe Community Centre. I don't know why I've been booked for this also. Is it the same or different?
It'll be the same content, so you don't need to come to both.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's okay. Thank you. Bye.
That's okay. Thank you. Here we just to explain. So we are offering face-to-face sessions, so they're longer, more interactive, more in-depth, at various locations around the 3 counties that we look after. But obviously that could be quite a wait for some people, and some people might not be able to attend the sessions that we do have available. So that's why we're also offering virtual training monthly to capture anyone that can't come to our face-to-face sessions or wanted to get in there sooner. So we are expecting quite a few today. How are we doing? Not as many have signed up yet. Hello there, good question.
Hi, yeah. So one of my staff have not received their link. I've just forwarded it to her. Is that okay, Alina?
Yes,
she did say she sent the message to join it. I'm not sure.
Yes, yeah, we have somewhere you've had like groups of people that have registered under one person, so they wouldn't have been sent individual links.
Okay.
We've only would have received the one email with the. So unless you've registered like for each individual separately with your own email address, if you've just.
I think she did. Okay. So I have 2 staff that I forwarded the email to them, and I think that she said she didn't get the link, so I've just forwarded it to her. Will that be okay if she joins?
That should work.
All right, lovely. I'll just text her and tell her to join. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic.
Thanks.
Okay. I think the the lobby entries have slowed down a little bit. So just for while I'm doing the teaching elements, if you could mute yourselves, and then just because of the background noise, and then when it comes to the interactive elements, you'll be able to unmute and answer the questions. So just in case you came in after I started talking, so I'm Naomi. I'm a dietitian. I work for the Medicines Optimization team, giving advice, and I'm going to be doing some training today on managing malnutrition and hydration. Bear with me, we're still having a few people arrive. So yeah, just for housekeeping, keep yourselves muted just for the background noise, and until we're asking questions. So I've asked if you can complete this quiz. It helps test your knowledge at the beginning, and then it's useful at the end to see how you're getting on. Now, the point system is not completely accurate. Please don't worry about that. I look through all the individual results at the end and correct the points. The system is just limited. So I'll give your answers, and then the points, just disregard them a little bit. The link is still in the chat, so I'm going to move on the slides, but if you still haven't done that quiz, you can do so. But we're going to make a start because there's a lot to get through today. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Please make sure you're in a quiet room, no distractions. It will be an interactive session, so we do encourage you.
So you should work too. I'm on the same link.
Sorry. We do encourage your interaction all throughout to try and help your learning and make sure it's interesting and not just me talking at you. And the session is about an hour and a half. Try our best to make sure completing to time. We haven't ever finished late, but I wouldn't promise finishing early because there's a lot to get through. So in terms of why we're running this session, so the session's on managing malnutrition and hydration, and why that matters is because the prevalence of malnutrition is so high. Every 1 in 3 residents has a risk of malnutrition or is malnourished, and what that means is that their body's not taking in enough nutrition to sustain their needs. So that means they're more at risk of infections, more likely to go into hospital. Once they're in hospital, they stay in there for longer because the recovery takes longer. They'll have more frailty, more likely to have falls, and if they do have a fall, more likely to have a fracture, and they're more likely at high risks of death. And it's a multifactorial condition, meaning it's affected by lots of different things and affects lots of different things. So it's very important that we cover it. When I say it's an 1.5 hour session, you could talk for days about it. So we'll cover what we cover, but it's still just scratching the surface almost. It's a big concept to address. But hopefully you'll leave the session feeling like you know a little bit more about screening for that risk of malnutrition, how to really look at someone's personhood and really assess how at risk they are and what you can do about it. So we're talking a lot today about bespoke, tailored nutrition care plans and customizing them to the residents' plan preferences and requirements. And then if you're concerned at the review point, how to escalate to your local services. So when you welcome in, when you welcome in a resident into your care home, in care homes, you're under certain governance and regulations. So the one in particular that matters here today is the CQC Regulation 14, which in essence boils down to that when you take on a resident, you are committing to meeting that resident's nutrition needs. And that's not just providing them with enough calories, but also there's vitamins and minerals and other nutrients. So we're really promoting today nutrient-dense management of malnutrition and provide you with some strategies that are promoting that healthy aging as well as managing the risk of malnutrition. So a lot of our content is from this malnutrition management pathway, and that was put together by like a task force group from across our 3 counties, various different specialties and specialists and experts that provided their opinion, and we collaborated together to make this comprehensive guide when managing malnutrition for care homes and care environments. In terms of where to find it, I will be emailing everybody the resource after the training, but it's available publicly on our website. I don't have the link. You'll be sent it, so I don't need to send it in the chat, but it's available there. In terms of what it covers, it breaks down really into 4 key steps. So step 1 is about assessing the risk of malnutrition. Step 2 is interpreting the score that you get when you calculate it and then addressing any of the underlying causes of the malnutrition. Step 3 is the biggest step, and that's all about putting in a care plan that's that tailored plan. It accounts for their religious needs, dietary preferences, any medical condition related restrictions, etc. And then step 4 is after a month of putting that plan into place, step back, review. If the plan's working, brilliant, and if it's not, what do we do next? So we'll get stuck in with step 1, and that's assessing the risk of malnutrition. So in some of your homes, you have electronic systems, and they'll do the electronic calculations for you. There's also a website online by Bapin, and that has like an online calculator, and some homes have paper charts that they use, and then it's not always everybody's responsibility to do these screening tools and do the maths and everything like that. However, we know that in the homes where everybody is trained on screening for malnutrition, there's no errors in that calculation. Whereas opposed to if not everybody's trained, we know that a third of scores had errors in the calculations of them. And partly it's human error, entering the wrong information, but partly it's down to the systems. They are just a little bit limited in how they do their calculations because to screen for someone's malnutrition risk, you're looking at their weights over time. And if someone's just lost weight steadily, it can do that perfectly well, that's fine. But if someone's been gaining and losing weight, it's not able to really pick out the key weights it's meant to, because it's meant to pick out their highest weight, not just the oldest weight. And that is calculated incorrectly sometimes, and that can just lead to underestimating someone's risk of malnutrition. That can obviously be a concern. So when you're looking at someone's risk of malnutrition, you want to start off with their weight and weigh them, and do a common sense check against the most recent weights, and if it's really significantly different, do it again. And then you're looking at their weight history for up to 6 months ago and at least 3 months ago. So a few months ago, but no more than 6, and really looking in that window, what was their highest weight at the time, to give us an idea of how it's been trending. So we do know, obviously, some people, they may have lost 10 kilos or something a year ago, but now their weight's been stable for at least 6 months. So we adjust for that. We only really want to know what their weight was doing in that immediate 3 to 6 month history. So this is from the pathway. It guides down step by step how we screen for malnutrition. There are links within the pathway to the BAPN tool, which is that electronic calculator, and it just goes through in different elements. So it breaks down into, first off, you've got the weight related score. So you get a score for that. You look at their weight against their height, and then there's a score for their weight history, so how much weight they've lost, and then you get a score for if they've not been eating for a few days, and that's if they're really acutely unwell. So it's not just if they've got a bit of a poor appetite. That means they're so poorly they've not been eating for 5 days. So we say we don't really use that score often in community because it's more rare. And then once you get a score for each of those factors and you add them together, you get that overall must score, and we'll go through it together. I just wanted to add in, before we do some maths together, that if you can't weigh someone, obviously if they're bedbound or if they refuse, you can do a mid-upper arm circumference. You might already be familiar with that, but that's where you measure that from the top point of the shoulder bones, I can't remember, they've got medical names, and the elbows, and find that midpoint and measure around it. It won't give you an exact BMI or anything like that. It will just give you a broad picture of whether they're underweight or healthy. And the BAPN tools online give you a bit more detail about how to use that, how to do it, in more information, and what the scores can mean. So we're going to go through it together. Sorry, skip ahead. And actually work it through with an example. So if you've got some phones to hand, or no doubt, well, I carry a calculator in my handbag, but that's because I'm a dietitian, so that's odd. I don't expect you to. But if you have your phones to hand, we'll get them out just for now, and then you can unmute yourselves. This is an interactive part. You can ignore the QR code. It's a little bit too complicated when there's groups online. So we'll just do the interactive between me and you can put your answers in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and volunteer them. So we're going to be working through some maths today, but you weren't expecting that. And we'll be going through initially how to calculate someone's BMI, assign them a score for that, then their weight loss, and then assign a score for it, and then what that means and what we do about it. So in this scenario, we've got Mrs. Smith, and she's 84, and she's moved into the care home, and you're completing her initial nutrition screening. So with Mrs. Smith, her current weight is 45 kilos, and her height is 1.55 meters. So when we do her maths together, what we do is we get her weight in meters, at 45, and you very simply divide it by the 1.55, and then you divide it by the 1.55 again. Now, is anyone able to do that and can volunteer the answer? Let me open the chat. Give you a minute.
It's 18.73.
Thank you very much. Oh, we got a 20.8 there. So it was 45 kilos divided by 1.55.
Yeah.
1.55 again. 18.7 was the correct answer.
Yes.
And then we assign a BMI score for that. The slides are a little bit small, so I'll just explain it. So if 50 kilos, so it's 45 at the moment. So when we're scoring someone for their BMI, if their BMI is over 20, that scores a 0 because we know that's actually healthy. So their weight is healthy for their height. If it's between 18.5 and 20, like in the case of Mrs. Smith, then we would score her a 1 for that, because we'd be slightly concerned because she's quite slim. And if her if her BMI was 18.5 or below, then that would be cause for concern. She's very underweight and very slim. We would be concerned with me. Okay, sorry. So she would get a score of 1 for that one. And then we look at her weight history. So in this example, Mrs. Smith, 3 to 6 months ago, was 50 kilos. So for this maths, we take what her highest weight was, which was 50, and her current weight was 45. So we don't necessarily need a calculator for that one, for the difference. So we do the 50 kilos. I'll just put it in the chat as well because I know it's small. And then, can anyone tell me what that is, that maths? 50 minus 45.
5.
Thank you, 5, excellent. And then we all need calculators for the next bit because then we do that difference. So the amount of weight she's lost is 5, and then we take 5 and divide it by what she was before. So 5 divided by 50 kilos, which she was before.
$8.9.
Get 8.9. So we're looking, we do the weight that she's lost and then divide it by the weight that she was before, so the highest weight. 5 divided by 50. 1.1, yeah. And then to make it a percentage, we then times that by 100. So 0.1 times it by 100 is 10. So for Mrs. Smith, she has lost 10% of her body weight. And then we give scores again. So if someone had gained weight in that time or maintained their weight or lost less than 5% of her body weight, she would score 0. We wouldn't be worried about that one, basically. If she's lost just between 5 and 10%, we give a score of 1. And if she's lost more than 10% in that 3 to 6 months, high risk, high cause for concern, scores of 2. So Mrs. Smith, she's lost 10% or above, and so we'd score 2 for that one. And then we add those scores together. So for Mrs. Smith, she had the score of 1 for her BMI, the score of 2 for her weight loss. She's not been acutely unwell, and altogether that gives us a must score of 3. Okay, so she is high risk of malnutrition. So what that means for us, we then have to interpret it. So we know she's a new resident. We don't know much about her history, but we can take it on face value and make an assessment. So if she scored 0 overall, that's where we, on paper, wouldn't be concerned. We would treat it as routine care and continue, continues just to observe and monitor, and everything is normal, unless you have a clinical reason to think you would be more concerned. So you always have your judgment to hand. You can always override those scores if you think you'd be more concerned for any particular reason. That's fine. And then for a must of 1, on paper, that's a medium risk of malnutrition. And then, sorry, just admitting someone, that's a medium risk of malnutrition. We definitely want to prevent that from becoming a high risk of malnutrition. So you might want to start straight away with some food changes, which we'll go through later. And if she was a must score of 2 or above, that is considered high risk of malnutrition, and that does require acting now, implementing a nutrition care plan with the enriching foods and nourishing drinks, etc., which we'll get into. Now, in some scenarios, let me just summarise. So altogether, step 1 is about identifying the risks. So you just do that assessment and do the maths, whether that's manually using the weight charts, using the online tools, using your software. You look at their weight, look at what their weight's been doing, and get a score for it. And then when you know your score, you know whether you need to act or not. Now, sometimes we need to interpret that score. So that's all step 2 for us, is about interpreting that score and then addressing it. So in our pathway, that's just some examples here. So we've put together multiple different examples of scenarios, whether you definitely do need to act or whether you could step back and think, we'll go for a different approach with this one. So where you might go with a different approach is if, say, you have a resident who's lost a lot of weight, but that's because refusing to eat, they're refusing to drink, they're refusing their medications, and they're imminently end of life. So for those residents, it would be to do a nutrition intervention because they're now end of life, and so we would recommend transitioning to a quality of life and comfort approach instead, offering what they like when they like it, as opposed to trying to make sure they're getting in as much nutrition as possible. We also wouldn't think it'd be appropriate to prescribe supplements for an end-of-life individual because there's not evidence to say that those supplements would prolong life in the end of life, and they can add more pressure to the resident when they're already showing quite natural refusal towards eating and drinking. It's a very normal part of the dying process. It doesn't make it any easier to witness and observe and be a part of, but it's very normal. So that again just reinforces that we can do a quality of life approach, even though they're on paper a high risk of malnutrition. Also, obvious common sense things. If someone had an amputation, obviously they'll have lost a lot of weight, or if they have fluid balance changes, they'll be losing weight on the scale, but it's fluid related as opposed to that muscle and fat mass. So we wouldn't be as concerned as what the results are saying. On the other hand, like I said, they might show that they're a medium risk of malnutrition, but that the system's just pulling the oldest weight, and actually they gained a bit and then lost even more. So you think actually their risk is even higher than the system is saying, and we do definitely need to do something. So if that makes sense, it's about interpreting that score, putting in your clinical rationale, your thinking behind it, and think, do I definitely need to do a plan, or do we need to do a more comfort approach, or monitor and observe at this stage? And certain things you can ask yourself when you're doing that is asking the resident themselves or their relatives if they feel like they've lost weight, especially if you don't know all their history. You can ask them about their appetite and how their eating has been. You can ask if they've been having any eating difficulties, swallowing problems, chewing problems, if they're needing additional support, and also think about what medications they're on and if they might be having side effects like sore mouth and nausea, constipation and diarrhea, and taste changes that could all be coming into play, affecting their appetite and causing their weight loss. So just to pull out a few examples from this malnutrition pathway, for example, with constipation, obviously if they're bunged up, there's not much room in there for more food. So addressing that will then help with their appetite. So supporting with their intakes of fibre or with medication changes to support that. And sometimes it's to do with their dexterity. They're really struggling with picking up the cutlery, and so that linking in with those other specialists like occupational therapists to provide adapted cutlery and adapted crockery where suitable and appropriate, which can better help them continue eating. And if they've got a chewing problem or if a swallowing problem, there's all the different specialists like the dentist and the speech and language therapist who can all support with that, give their tools and techniques for helping improve their overall eating. So we're going to do an interactive case study together, so you can again unmute yourselves. And we've got here Mr. Ahmed. He is 87. He's got a background of dementia. He has been eating and drinking less, and you note that his dentures aren't fitting. He's been coughing while eating, and he's sleepy during his meals. So I'm going to get you started with your first question, and you can answer that on the chat or shout it out. Bear with me, and I will ask you the question as well. I'm just going to copy it into the chat, that's easier. The first question will be, who can you refer to about his coughing while eating?
Salt team.
Salt.
Perfect. Yep. Don't worry, there's no trick questions at the beginning. It's just to get you all in the mood, and it will get more challenging as we go along. Okay, and who can you refer to about his loose dentures?
Dentist.
Yeah, perfect. Good. And is there anything that can be done about him being sleepy during his meals?
Changing meal
Check on what
times.
is he sleeping at night? Is there an issue there? Is he sleeping awake at night and then asleep in the day? Do we need to refer him to the GP? Is there something wrong with him? Has he got some underlying issue?
Lovely, insightful answers there. Has anyone else got any suggestions?
Changing his meal times.
Yes, and that was
maybe
the medication. Yep.
Yeah, that might
engage with him while he's eating, so he doesn't fall asleep. You could refer him to the doctor, GP.
Yep, definitely. So definitely involve GP in case it's medication related, and they're looking at the sleep hygiene overnight. Perhaps there's things going on that's affecting his sleep at night time, but also adjusting those meal times, finding out when he is more alert and can eat better at those times.
No.
Do you mind repeating that one? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Sorry, sometimes there's a delay. And what else can be done to help at meal times? What do you do for these sorts of residents?
Where is he sitting? Is he sitting with other people that he likes to sit with? Is he in the dining room with everybody else? Is he on his own? That kind of thing.
Make sure he's hydrated.
Does he like the food that we're giving him?
Very good. Any other ideas?
We could review his medication. Maybe that's making him feel sleepy.
Yeah. So if you'd already gone to the doctor, but it's the meal time itself, you tried adjusting the timings and the medication. So then once you're actually at the meal time, making it social and also prompting from the chat. Yes.
He's dehydrated. That's why he's feeling sleepy. He's only having 600 ml a day.
Very good, well spotted. He's not drinking very well. So then prompting with fluids or adjusting the types of fluids he's being given. In the chat as well, is he able to eat by himself or does he need help? So yes, prompting and assisting with meals. Excellent. Very insightful there. Honestly, every time I do these sessions, you get slightly different flavours, and it shows obviously everyone's got their niches and their skills and behind it. So I think everyone really brings the good thinking towards solving these sorts of issues, because it can be lots of different things going on. So just in summary there, what I put, although there were some different ones in there this time, definitely refer to the CELT and the dentist and the GP for the medication review, offer that prompting and support and more social meals, and then more support with hydration, and then enriching his foods because he has been losing some weight as well. So that's just to go to show it can be a little bit of a problem solving thing to find out what's been going on. There could be one factor, there could be many, and it could involve a whole team to try and get to the bottom of why he's been losing weight and all the other consequences of that, and getting to the bottom of it to support him. So once we've identified it and addressed it, it's all about implementing that care plan, step 3. So from the malnutrition pathway, we have here the flow chart. So it breaks it down what to do for the different scores of malnutrition. So if someone had a low risk of malnutrition, that's that standard care, unless they had a wound as well. So if they had got a wound, it's irregardless of their weight, because they would have their nutrition needs increased. So when you've got a wound, it's literally leaching protein and nutrients from the wound and from trying to heal it. So they need extra nutrients, including protein. So they should still be offered some wound care nutrition support, and we do have resources on that on our website. We've got, I think, 2 or 3 different resources with high protein snacks and drinks that are store-bought and homemade. And then if they were that medium or high risk of malnutrition, we would say start with a food diary, which we'll go into next, and then putting in an aim that's really appropriate, not just clinically, but also for the needs of the resident and what they're worried about, or the relative. And then where there's differences between that medium and high risk of malnutrition, in our service, what we recommend is just a difference in how much extra energy that you're providing. So for that medium risk of malnutrition, we recommend trying to provide the resident with an extra 300 to 500 calories a day on top of what they're already eating. And if they're high risk of malnutrition, you should be aiming for an extra 500 to 1,000 calories a day. And that can be achieved through a mix of enriching their meals, nourishing high energy snacks, and nourishing drinks. And then you would monitor them. You could monitor their weight weekly and definitely rescreen their score of malnutrition monthly, and then review and see if that plan is working or not. So in terms of the food diary, so I feel like the food diary at its least useful is just documenting what was on the menu that day. You know, there was cottage pie for lunch and they had fish and chips in the evening, and that gets filed away and never looked at again. But where it can be very useful is for a lot of different things. For one, it can be used as evidence for if you were escalating it onto a dietitian and they want to see that what kind of care plan you've put in place, so you can use it as evidence. It can be used when you first got a resident come into the home to really identify their preferences and their patterns of eating. And it can be used as well to check that you are doing your care plan. So as a way to actually say, yep, we are doing what we said we would be doing. Where I wouldn't necessarily recommend using the food diary is an end of life, or actually when their weight is stable. Obviously, you have your own policies and pathways that you have to follow. But I wouldn't necessarily, as a dietitian, if they're stable, then I wouldn't be concerned enough to be monitoring their food. But I've heard it from the other side that it's helpful as a retrospective tool almost, that if you've seen someone's lost weight, you can actually go back and see as evidence. So I do understand it, but yeah, but it's up to you. So in terms of identifying these preferences and patterns of their eating, I think when you've got someone's food diary, I would say do it for 3 days to 7 days and actually have a little look at it properly and look for certain things. Are they definitely being offered their 3 meals a day? Are they definitely being offered at least 2 to 3 snacks or puddings a day? Are they being offered 2 nourishing drinks a day? If they're losing, if that's part of your care plan and they're losing weight, for example, you can look at how much they're eating of particular meals. So do they eat more of one type than another? Do they have a preference for drinks or not? Is there a staff member that's always on shift that day and they actually eat better with them than with someone else? Is it that they prefer eating in the dining room as opposed to in their own room, or vice versa? Do they eat better when there's music on or the TV on or when it's off? And you can really narrow it down. And in terms of how you collate all that information, I've seen lots of different things. I think it's great. Some people have diet passports. Some people have a diet card that they pin up in the kitchen with like a picture of the resident. Some people have it in their care plans. I would just say have a little think about what's going to be as visible as possible for anyone in your team that's going to take responsibility for that resident's eating and drinking. Everybody has to know about it if they've got a requirement or a preference, and so what is most visible. And this is just an example from our pathway that you could note down not just their texture requirements, any allergies, intolerances, religious requirements or preferences, and then whether they need assistance or not, or certain positionings, support, any specialist equipment, and then times of day, what they actually prefer to eat. Do they like a cold breakfast or a hot one, like a sandwich type lunch, or do they prefer a cooked meal? And same again at dinner. And then in terms of do they actually like eating with others or not, and where do they prefer eating? So I know you all know your residents really well, and if they can't inform you, then the relatives are also a really useful tool for getting that information. And I wanted to show you where a food diary can give you these answers. So it's probably too small for you. So I'll just give you an overview. So where someone here in this scenario, we've got a Derek Andrews here, and we've got ticks on the right side. So we've got it broken down to whether they've eaten none of their meal, half of their meal, or all of it. And in the morning, I'm seeing lots of ticks on the right hand side under the all or most for their breakfast and their mid-morning snacks. They're eating only half their meals at lunchtime, and they're eating barely anything in the evening, just a bite or declining it entirely. So if that were your resident, Derek, and you could see he's eating more in the morning and less in the evening, what would you then infer from that? How could you inform your care plans if he'd been losing weight?
I think you'd start with giving him a heartier breakfast and maybe his main meal at lunch rather than in the evening.
Perfect. Yeah, I would do exactly that. I think we can make the most of those meals that he is eating. We can enrich those and then not put so much pressure to enrich all his entire evening meal as well, because we know he would only manage a few bites of it. And then the other key difference is this gentleman, he is drinking all of his fortified smoothies and his juices, but he has actually been declining the fortified homemade milkshakes and the fortified hot chocolate, the other milky drink. So that's a clear pattern that he doesn't like milky drinks, but it's not that he's intolerant to milk, because he can have the teas with some milk in them. It's just that overall really milky drinks is not to his taste. But because he likes the fruity ones, would infer from that in the care plan, we could offer him these enriched fruity drinks. So the food diaries then act like a pattern finding tool, and I think I know we have to do a lot of documentation in care homes, but if we just really do it in depth for 3 days rather than putting pressure on doing it all the time, then we can just see and identify those patterns and really get good information from it. And then if you're needing to then test, if you're doing your care plan, you can continue it. But the other key thing that was shown out in this food diary, where highlighted, is all the extra enrichment that's been added, and it goes to show how much enrichment's being added here, there and everywhere. And it's really important with quantities when you enrich of how much, because in every home I visited, every home can show that they're doing a fortified diet for their residents, but I would just challenge where the understanding is that they're automatically on an enriched diet, because at minimum that could just be cream in the porridge for everybody and butter in the mash for everybody. As a dietitian, I want to challenge that, because if they're eating like that and still losing weight, it's not enough, and they need to be having extra in addition. And that doesn't mean prescribing something straight away. It means what can we do with enriching their meals on a person level, at a meal level, to add actually enough calories and protein. So it's not just about butter and cream, it's about those enriching, nourishing, nutrient dense enrichment strategies. And what I'll describe from the food diary there for you is that it's usually about a tablespoon of enrichers per portion. So like a tablespoon of milk powder can be stirred in, or a tablespoon of the cream per person. That's not just a knob of butter in a whole big pot of the mashed potato for everyone. That really won't cut it and make enough of a difference if they're already losing weight. It needs to be sufficient per person per meal. And that was a little bit of a whiz ahead, because I got ahead of myself. So in terms of this food-based approach, we break it down into the 1, 2, 3 method in general, but always tailor it in terms of quantities and everything for the resident. So in general, this 1, 2, 3 method is about adding this extra 1,000 calories a day, as well as the protein and vitamins and minerals and fibre where possible. And that 1, 2, 3 amounts to 1 pint of fortified milk, 2 snacks and 3 enriched meals. So this 1 pint of fortified milk is just a pint of full fat milk with an extra 4 tablespoons of milk powder. Are there any homes that are using milk powder? Yeah, seeing some
Yeah.
nods.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Excellent. So I think milk powder is an excellent strategy because it can be added into this milk, and then that can be used whenever they're having tea or coffee or cereals or their nourishing drinks. And so a pint you might think is a bit, but it goes quite far if you think you're using it for cereals or the whole mug is full of the milk. And that provides about 500 calories a day plus 30 grams of protein. So if they were able just to have that pint of milk alone with the extra milk powder, they're already halfway there to this goal. And then with the two, we got a question.
Hi. So we don't use powdered milk in our care home. We do have residents that need to put weight on. So I think that's really good. But is it just like a normal milk powder? Or what is it?
So there's different
Is there
types
different
out there.
types?
Yeah, there are different types. So you may be, if you're not familiar with milk powder at all, you may already be familiar with Coffee Mate, which is what people use if they've run out of milk in the cupboard. That one, it does dissolve really well, and it's high in calories, but it doesn't have much protein in it. There is a brand called. Sorry, there's a brand called Marvel. They're the main brand that do skimmed milk powder. Supermarkets do their own brand, and I know catering suppliers like Breaks, and I can't remember any of the other suppliers now, they do milk powder as well in bulk. So the skim milk powder is the highest in protein, but there is also whole milk powder as well. And in terms of how you can use it, I do have a video. I will hope that it plays. So this is, just to clarify, the video is taken from one of our providers, the Berkshire Healthcare. They're going to tell you just some slightly different calories. I've just, it's an estimate when I say 500 calories. But this will show you the fortified milk being made up and then using that to make up some other nourishing drinks. And hopefully it plays and has sound. Let me know if you can't hear it. So that obviously is a per cup. I do have a handout with bulking up that recipe to like a litre jug and a 2 litre jug, because it might be easier. I know some homes already have milkshakes on their tea trolleys and have it as an option. But the key really is that if you've got a resident that's losing weight, it's making sure that it is documented that they have been offered that milkshake and or other nourishing drink alternative, and that you're monitoring how much they've had of it and documenting that down for your evidence that you're providing as per your care plan. So because a nourishing drink can provide 300 calories, if not more, with all those extra additions like the extra cream or extra fruit or extra blah, blah, blah. So at least 300 calories, and then they should provide 12 grams of protein. So on my visits around care homes, there's a lot of creativity with milkshake recipes, and I definitely think every home had a slight variation on the milkshake recipe, and even within the homes I asked a chef and then a care assistant and then witnessed it being made 3 different ways. So lots of variation there. In terms of energy, I would say they were on average about 300 calories, but the protein fell short and didn't meet the 12 grams of protein per portion. So our recipe does provide even more actually than 12 grams of protein, and we do have a whole range of recipes online, and you'll be given the link to our resources. So we've got a whole sheet, 2-sided, of milky recipes, but we also have fruity alternatives and dairy-free alternatives for different preferences. It's worth noting if someone is on a milk-free diet that the protein is not always as high, but that's just being aware of it. So I think that was everything I wanted to share about milkshakes. So we could aim, they act as an alternative to like the prescribed versions. You may be familiar with like Ensure's and Fortisips, Outplay and Ames shakes and everything. Those will provide about 300 calories and 12 grams of protein. So just from a homemade one, you get just as much energy and protein if you're making it as per the recipes provided. And then in terms of these other enrichers, so enrichment or fortifiers or boosters, depending on what terminology you might already be aware of, it's basically where you take these ingredients, like I mentioned before, like adding cream to the porridge or butter to the mashed potato, for example. That's an act of enriching a food that already exists. You already had your porridge, and then you've added cream to it to enrich it, make it more nourishing, more calorie dense without increasing the volume of the food, which is the key, because obviously appetite is very much a factor in for a lot of individuals that are struggling with their weight, is that they just can't eat that much. So the act of enrichment is just one tool of the 3 to try and provide some extra nutrition. Now I've given some examples of some milky ones and also their milk-free alternatives. So you may already be adding butter and cream. If you had a milk-free resident, there are vegan butters and Oatly and soya creams. You can have grated cheese or vegan cheese. If someone couldn't tolerate milk powder, you can get plant-based alternatives. So you can get milk powders made from oats and made from coconut, also made from peas and made from soya. So some of those are higher in protein than the others. And then instead of Greek yogurt, you can get coconut yogurts. And then just some other options there. We've got some nut butters and ground almonds as well. So, and also not even on that side, there's also, you can add, smashed dates, mushed up avocado, as well as these other more nutrient dense enrichment, because for aging well, we want to be providing fiber, calcium for their bones, the fiber for their bowel health, B vitamins for their energy and for their brain function. And that's in line with the national guidance about aging well and trying to for, you know, highlighting these different nutrients that are required in older adulthood. I appreciate not all homes here support older adults, but it's just the majority do, so that's why there's a focus on that. So just to summarise, we talked about this food first or food-based approach, and that is the 1-2-3 method of providing that 1 pint of the fortified milk with that additional milk powder, the energy dense snacks, which I'm about to go over, and then enriching those meals. And you can really make a difference when you're enriching. Even just if you're doing enough per portion, you can definitely get an extra loads, 300 calories minimum a day if you just targeted 3 foods, but you could do so much more, and it really can make a difference when you're adding enough. In terms of snacks, these are from the BDA Care Home Digest. So that resource is again produced nationally by the British Dietetic Association in collaboration with this National Catering Association, and they've put together a whole guide for care homes, and it covers not just what we're talking about today with malnutrition, but everything nutrition related, so including diabetes diet or certain religious diets and fibre and everything like that, and texture modified diet. So it covers everything. They're also promoting nutrient dense snacks, so not just biscuits and cakes, but perhaps flapjacks instead, which are more fibrous because they've got the oats and the dried fruit, as well as still being high in energy. Or perhaps things like cheese scones or Scotch eggs, which have higher protein. So trying to think about some, I've got some more examples here. So you can have different energy density of your snacks, and if you're trying to think, how am I going to get an extra 300 to 1,000 calories a day, you might just need to provide an extra banana or some sausage rolls, or if they've got more weight to regain, then you might need to think about an extra slice of toast mid-afternoon with some cheese and ham, or enriching the snacks as well. So if you had a little cake slice, you can add extra cream and custard to make it even more calorie dense. So we do have these snack ideas, but also vegan alternatives. So where we have to use the soya or based alternatives, or coconut based alternatives, and nut based things only if there aren't allergies, obviously, in the home. And then we have to think about resident preferences. So sometimes I've mentioned obviously vegan and some milk-free things there, but also obviously some residents prefer a sweet snack, some prefer a savoury. So incorporating that into care plans and adjusting for preferences. And then also with not just snacks, but eating in general. Some residents, as you all know, don't like to sit down. So they are getting up and wandering the corridors and not able to just sit and eat. So having to think about which snacks can be handheld and be able to pick up and eat them. So instead of having, what was my example? I recently discovered, instead of pasta, I know it's not a snack, pasta, you can make into something that you can pick up and eat by baking them into like muffin trays. And it's just like an innovative way of still making the meal as the same as what everyone else is eating, but just in a form that's easier for them to eat. I've also seen like popcorn chicken, like during a movie, that's something they can just pick up and eat. Sorry, let me just got some people in the lobby. As an alternative, and roast dinners can even be made into finger foods by not having gravy with it, but just making sure like potatoes are more into like wedge shaped, or rather than having peas and sweet corn, that you do carrots in the longer versions, or like broccolis with more of a stalk, and then they can pick up and eat it rather than just having like chicken goujons and chips. They can still have a more standard type meal where possible. Sometimes, obviously, doesn't apply to curry and rice or something. That's, I don't know how to make that a finger food actually off the top of my head, but there's probably some really innovative strategies out there. But yeah, so in essence, customizing the snacks and trying to get some calorie dense and nutrient dense ones. So not just biscuits and cakes where possible, but these more nourishing things like the flapjacks and the falafel, samosas, quiche slices, toast with like pate or cheese on top, even just a small sandwich, or some people do like pizza slices or these small snackable chicken bites. for things that have nutrients as well as energy. And that's just a summary of our recipe. So we would say about the full fat milk and the 4 tablespoons of milk powder, and then some 2 tablespoons of milk shake powder. So a lot of homes use crusher, and some homes just use the no added sugar crusher, and that doesn't provide any nutrition. It's just pink liquid, in a syrup, just flavour, isn't it? Whereas fortified milkshake powder, so the store-bought or branded alternatives like Nesquik, they're enriched with extra vitamins. So then you're providing a little bit more nourishment than just a flavour and a sweetener as well. And there's some examples there of the milk powder that we already went over earlier. So obviously too small to see, this is from my malnutrition pathway, but it's just to show that a standard menu can be added to with an extra 1,000 calories and 40 grams of protein just from enrichment. That doesn't include necessarily everything else. Judith?
Hi. So all this stuff you're showing us, will we get a copy of any of this? Is it going to come to us? You know, like what's on screen now? It's really
Yep.
That's really helpful.
It's really small. Yeah. So a lot of the screenshots, they're from the malnutrition management pathway. And the link for that will be sent in the email with your certificate. And then I'll also be doing the link to all our nutrition resources.
Lovely.
And some of the handouts as well, because they're like the bulking up the milkshake recipe and things like that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that.
That's all right. So just a summary then of these different enrichments. So you could have, it's just picture version. Some other things I had forgotten to mention earlier, like olive oil or like condensed milk and mayonnaise, as well as ground almonds and peanut butter, creamed coconut, smashed avocado. You can whisk eggs into like sauces and things like that. So we can do a lot with enrichment and not just butter and cream to add some nutrition and not just energy. I'm going to work through some examples. So with porridge on its own, just made with oats and some milk, is just under 400 calories and 16 grams of protein. But if you were to add 2 tablespoons of milk powder and a tablespoon of cream and a couple of tablespoons of the ground almonds, you would be providing just in that meal alone an extra 400 calories and 17 grams of protein. So you wouldn't even need to add all 3 of those ingredients, but it just goes to show what a difference it can make when you add extra enrichment and the protein in there as well. Same again for soup. If you just had a standard cream of tomato soup recipe, it's just over 200 calories and 5 grams protein. But if you were to add 2 tablespoons of fat skimmed milk powder, a little handful of grated cheese and 3 tablespoons of yogurt, you could add an extra 300 calories and over 20 grams of protein. So even if you just picked one of those fortifiers, you're adding an extra 100 calories and a few grams of protein per fortifier, basically. And with coffee and biscuits, if you had standard coffee with a splash of milk and a couple of rich tea biscuits, that's 100 calories and 2 grams of protein. But if you were to add the fortified, you could either make it with fortified milk, or you can just add the milk powder directly into the drinks. Just got to give them a good enough stir to get the lumps out. Or if you made it like a latte style. So in this example, they're making a latte style coffee. So the mug is milk with the extra coffee in it, and you're making it with a fortified milk. And then in this example, giving the chocolate digestive biscuits rather than rich teas, you're adding nearly 400 calories and nearly 20 grams of protein. And that's just from their mid-morning snack. The malnutrition pathway also goes through some case studies of if they don't like milky drinks. And there's another case study in there for someone that wonders quite a bit. So if someone didn't like milky drinks, we mentioned these milk powder alternatives, so the oat-based or coconut, pea or soya protein alternatives, and all those things like the vegan butters and vegan cheeses and vegan yogurts, but also snacks. Even if they don't like milky drinks, it's worth checking if they can still tolerate cheese, because it might just be the texture of milky drinks. So still you could see about cheese straws or something like that. Boiled eggs, pork pies, things that are maybe savoury in terms of if they don't like these drinks, and maximising on the snacks basically instead of if they couldn't have the milky drinks and they didn't like the fruity ones or the dairy-free, then I would say maximise on the snacks instead where you can. But was there any questions? Sorry.
Is there a dairy-free powder that you can add to any drink, like you would add the dried milk to a milky drink? Is there a protein powder or something that you can easily add to a squash or?
Oh, squash. Oh, you threw me there. Okay, so if they were having like a milk-free alternative, so if they had like a soya milk, you could add the soya cream to it, and then there are powders made from oat. So there's an oat powder and a coconut powder that you can buy online, and there are protein powders like a pea protein and a soya protein powder. Okay. Yeah, squash though, and that's a tricky one. So if it's squash and juices, there is a protein powder that you can add to water. But yes, these things, the protein powders are obviously more costly, aren't they, for the catering budget? So it's something to think about whether you target it through drinks or whether just maximise on snacks and enrichment of the meals. But if there was a budget, then that definitely there are options, but a little bit more restricted. No, it is an excellent question, and that's why we focus so much on both providing information for milky as standard, but then also dairy-free, because we know not everyone can tolerate dairy and not everyone likes it. But you can still add, this is also from the malnutrition pathway, with the dairy-free alternatives, you can still add 1,000 calories, just not quite as much protein as easily. So that's through those vegan cheeses, the soya creams, the Oatly creams, the alternative protein powders, ground almonds, nut butters, etc. all throughout. So just a summary of our resources, we have like a standard everything all in one page, a one pager. That's not true, it's 2 pages. Sorry, but that's for a standard diet and a dairy-free alternative one. And then there's the 3 drinks ones. So we've got the milky ones, the dairy-free and the fruity. We've got the wound care resources as well, and the high protein snacks. So we do try and cover the bases to do that. And then there's also that the Care Home Digest from that British Dietetic Association as well. How are we doing for time? Okay, so on hydration, we know older adults need up to about 2 litres a day, and if they don't have it, why they might struggle to get that is for a variety of reasons. They might forget that they're thirsty or not remember what the sensation feels like if they've got dementia, or that might be medical related, like the diarrhea and vomiting, or swallowing difficulties. And I know when someone's on like a texture modified fluid, they don't find it as easy to drink, so they end up drinking less, and that's obviously really challenging. And then even reduced access to their preferred one. So I have seen some lovely drinks trolleys in some of my care home visits, and some homes that put like fruit in the water, and it's like accessible. They've got them on every floor and every corridor. There's like drink stations everywhere, and like bistros and cafes and bars, and make it as fun as possible. And like themed days as well. So thinking, I was just talking yesterday about I went to a care home on Burns night, and so the whole care home was themed, and they had a bagpipe player visiting, and they had the restaurant meal that day was neeps and tatties and haggis. And so it themed the food around the events, but the same thing with theming drinks. You could have afternoon teas, or like have a Caribbean day and have like pineapple flavoured drinks or things like that, just making it a bit more exciting and appetising. And on hospital wards, they decorate their drinks trolleys sometimes in the National Hydration Week, and put fairy lights on them or bunting and things, just to make it a bit more interesting and exciting. And we know that if someone doesn't drink, the main one is that they're more likely to get UTIs, but it can also cause constipation and blood pressure issues, confusion, falls, pressure injuries, poor wound healing, and even death. So I mentioned a few of the strategies about making it exciting and making it accessible. Also just taking the opportunity. So if they, during medicines rounds, you normally just give them like a shot of fluid to take their pills. They could have a whole drink at that time, and then that's another opportunity to drink. I know people have drinks rounds like, pre-breakfast, mid-morning, with lunch, mid-afternoon, with dinner, before bed. You know, that's like 6 or 7 opportunities to have a drink throughout the day, and then having drink stations all around everywhere, and then having drinks as part of the activity. So giving as many opportunities and modelling it and making it more excitable and accessible all contributes to bettering their hydration. But what if they can't drink? So obviously some residents will still struggle to drink, even with all your strategies and making it as exciting and fun as possible. But there are some foods that are hydrating. So things like jelly and baked beans and yogurts, all sorts of scrambled egg, omelettes, cottage cheese, mash, they all still provide some fluid. So you don't have to just drink water to get your fluid intake. Any fluid counts. Apart from alcohol, really, and caffeinated drinks aren't the best, but if they're going to have nothing else, then I'm not going to criticise it. It still will count at the end of the day, and then certain foods will contribute to their overall fluid intake as well. And then a note on supporting their eating. So it's not just about what they eat, but also that whole environment. I've seen some really lovely homes that make eating so much more exciting. Some really embrace the dining room environment and have like gentle jazz music playing and like tablecloths, or maybe little flowers or plastic flowers on the tables and a napkin, and making sure some homes have a little sachet for cleaning their hands with, so it's just, they're more prepared for their meal time. And some have menus and treat it a bit more like a restaurant. Obviously it depends on what the needs of the residents in your homes are, but whatever strategies you have, and also learning from each other is also helpful. And also with feedback from the residents as well, because some homes have either tablets up in the homes or do little feedback cards so that the residents can then actually feedback about what they liked about the meal, but also the meal environment and what they liked better, because some people will eat better when there's background music, but others won't. So then you have to think, how can we support all these individuals? Some need more assistance, some less. And we know it is a protective factor. So in the homes I visited and looking at the prevalence of malnutrition, the homes that had more staff on hand at meal times had lower risk of malnutrition. So they got everyone involved. Even management came down to help out meal times, even if it's just rolling up sleeves and tidying up plates, or sitting down and actually having a prompting chat with the resident. It really makes a difference in terms of prevalence of malnutrition when the staff are there to assist and support with the positioning and getting them upright and getting them prepared, because it's all cues, everything like that. The whole getting ready for the meal builds anticipation in the body. So we know when people will smell food and see it, your body actually starts producing those gastric acids and things that prime your body for digestion. So it all makes eating an easier and more pleasurable experience, and they'll actually digest it better as well. Okay, note on swallowing and chewing difficulties. So if we've got dementia combined with dysphagia, they're almost twice as likely to die if they have aspiration, studies show. So it's a very concerning feature, and there's just so many things going on. There's that lack of recognition, the remembering what to do. So they might have the problem in the cutting up the food, in the getting the food from their fork to their mouths, the chewing of it, the moving of that bolus from their mouth to the back of their mouth, the actual swallow, the muscles of the swallow can be affected. If they've lost a lot of weight, their dentures won't be fitting, so that can affect the chewing. And if they're pocketing and holding food in their mouth, they might then over time get more tooth decay or mouth pain from like infections and things like that. So all those things going on, as well as whatever medication side effects or pain or other medical conditions that they've got all as well. So there's so much things going on. Obviously, you already know about SALT. They have got a flow chart in terms of who they will and won't see. In essence, they obviously see swallowing difficulties, but they wouldn't support just chewing difficulties or just weight loss on its own, or if someone's refused support, or if they're eating and drinking at risk. Each area does provide leaflets on the eating and drinking at risk and how to handle that, and they all will offer additional training on that, the IDSI, so that texture modified diet requirements. So they were definitely reaching out for that, but they wanted to just, obviously I'm not a speech and language therapist, I can't teach you more in detail about dysphagia, that's not my expertise, but they, in me working with them, they just wanted to make you aware of what their referral criteria is and that they do offer training and resources. Excuse me. And this texture modified diet, yes, Judith?
Hi, sorry, I keep asking the question. So we have a resident that's on level 6 at the moment, and we're doing a diary for him with, and I know you can't really comment much on the ITSI levels, as you said, but you said there is somewhere they offer training. Will that be in with the paperwork you're going to send, or do we go online? Because I
not
would really
automatically,
like,
but I can add it for you. That's no problem.
Would you mind? That's great, because I'd like all of my staff to go on the training, because we having issues at the moment with losing weight, but he's on a level 6 bite size, and so there's a lot of things he can't have that would normally be put into a diet for him to put weight on. So yeah, that training link would be really perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And yeah, I completely understand that there are always these unique scenarios, or not even that unique, where it's just such a challenge for you in your homes to try and meet that resident's nutrition needs. And this training won't offer you all the answers. It's designed more for routine, run-of-the-mill type residents to get your everything a bit more, standardized, so that everyone's on the same page for managing routine care, and then doing the best to try and meet those needs for that month, and then on review, or even if that plan's not appropriate and it needs a greater support, escalating to all the specialist SALT teams, the dietitians, the occupational health, and everyone, because not everyone is routine care. There's so much complexity nowadays with these combined conditions of dementia and swallowing difficulties and kidney diseases and or liver disease or cancers. Everyone's got these complexities now. Nobody's just a standard resident anymore. So this is just to fill in some gaps, but I know it won't support every individual that you've got in your homes, because they're definitely more complex nowadays. So with texture modification, that's where they have the soft and bite size or minced and moist. It just makes food, it's basically like partly chewing the food for them, really. Not chew, that sounds horrible, but making it easier to chew and easier to swallow, where they're struggling to do that themselves. And there are different levels and standards to that. There can be a challenge that it's just less acceptable, and they might struggle to then eat or drink with those modified texture requirements. But we were just wanting to, actually, we're going to do the case study first, and then we can go through the answers. So interactive time, everybody. We have Mrs. Patel. She is 82. She was admitted to your care home from a rehabilitation unit after a stroke. She's got some right-sided weakness, some communication issues, and she's got confirmed dysphagia, and she has been assessed by SALT already. And the SALT have prescribed a level 4 puree diet and level 3 moderately thick fluids. But now you're noticing that Mrs. Patel, she's refusing her meals, she's finding them unappetizing, she's pocketing the food in her mouth, and the family are concerned that she's losing weight and not enjoying her food. So if I may ask you, what could you do to make the pureed meals more appealing?
I mean, Mrs. Patel may eat not like British food if she's in a care home that serves mainly British food. So maybe her family could bring things in for her that can be pureed. Maybe like their curries that they like, and the nice spicy food that they like. Maybe that would help. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Or give them give the care home the recipes. And it's hard to cook Indian food. I'll try.
True. But they might be able to advise on those familiar foods,
the spices and stuff. Yeah.
So the family can act.
The food that we puree for them, you could disguise it like into chips or something like that, make something out of it so the texture changes, so they think they're eating something better than that looks better.
So
I think that I don't know how to quite put it, but like when we're preparing our meals, you can make, when you mash the greens, just make it presentable. Don't just put it all together. Like put it like an orange thing, a potato there, the chicken there, or whatever, and it looks nice as compared to just putting it all together and mash it all together.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
If you've got a little bit of time and money, you can get food molds that would make it look the shape of the original food, that might help her engage with what she's eating if she can recognise it more easily.
That's very true. It's visual cues again, that you're actually seeing it and it looks so similar to what peas look like originally or what rice looked like originally, but it's the pure texture. As you mentioned, the family being involved with advising on the more culturally familiar.
Sit with them and like with family, and they think about other things, and you can sit with them. And
yes,
you could eat with them. If you eat with them, they think it's you're eating together, so they might be more prone to eating with you, with other people sit at the table.
That's really
also
key.
Another thing, I think also when you're assisting them, explaining to them what you're giving them as compared to just giving it to them.
It's good. Yeah. It's good prompting, helping with the memory and remembering it. Some really lovely thoughts there. I think the key is the activating the eating mindset and prompting, modeling, mirroring, being there, being present, encouraging it, that it all works and it all adds up. And lastly, what techniques can reduce pocketing?
So my first question is, what side is her stroke, and is the food going to that side? In which case we can help present the food to the other side and encourage her to use the stronger side of her mouth to eat the food if possible.
Lovely answer, thank you. Haven't heard that one yet. No one's given an answer before.
I am a speech therapist, so I'm cheating slightly.
Well then, your expertise shows. Thank you. Definitely. And then what could be a constant?
I'm thinking maybe giving like fluids in between, like in between eating, like small amounts of fluids at a time.
Yeah, to clear the mouth. Yeah.
Slow rate when you're feeding, so you're not rushing. It's a slow rate.
Yeah, slow it down. Excellent. And obviously not encouraging talking while eating, because then just want to make sure that mouth is clear. And I mentioned earlier about the mouth care. So if she'd been pocketing food a lot or keeping it in her mouth, it can lead up to the tooth decay. So making sure providing the extra oral care around her meals. But there's some really lovely insights there, making the meal more visually appealing, putting it into molds, keeping the food separate, still got the colours in there, with prompting in a slower pace, and involving the family as much as possible with more familiar meals, and prompting at meal times if they can come in to support and assist at meal times as well. Thank you very much. So mentioned a little bit here and there about dementia. There's no way we could cover everything about dementia this short training. So just wanted to give an overview really, that losing weight is very common in people that have a diagnosis of dementia, and this unintended weight loss can cause a more rapid progression of the dementia, as well as increasing the risk of other problems like their pressure sores, infections, falls, because they might be more dizzy or more confused. Not everyone will get weight loss with dementia. Some people may gain weight because they've got memory issues, so they might forget that they've eaten and eat again, for example. Other people with dementia might lose their sense of taste or their smell, or prefer sweeter foods. So we've seen strategies like if they prefer sweet food, when you're preparing their main meal, they can still add sweeter flavors like the sweet condiments or even honey to their peas, for example, and that might make the meal more appetizing for them, so they still enjoy it. Appetite and thirst may also be really affected because they've got changes in the parts of their brain that recognize fullness, and as well combined with the depression if they've got it, or other illnesses, they might be less active. They might also have other dental issues, or be in pain, or have side effects of certain medications. Then there's the forgetfulness part of it. They might forget to eat or drink, or they might have communication problems, communicating that they're hungry or that they're thirsty or what they prefer. They may lose the recognition of the food and turn away from it. Some people may even eat non-edible items. And then that combination with dysphagia, again, it's very common, and it might be because they're finding it difficult to recognize or sense that the food is in their mouth, and they're having a delayed reaction to it, or that difficulty coordinating their movements to chew it and then swallow it. And then lastly, the coordination movements for actually feeding themselves, cutting the food up, transferring it to their mouths, and so they might need that assistance with feeding. So just to draw your awareness to its affects so many different parts of the eating environment, and it can be very, very challenging to think and adapt to all those aspects. We talked a little bit earlier on about those finger foods and how they can be useful and adaptable, and a way to just prolong the dignity with eating and delay having to spoon feed and assist. It can be a useful strategy when they're getting up and moving about and enabling them to still eat. Some homes do graze boxes, so they've got an actual box of foods that they can help themselves to, and that might be in various places. Always have to do a bit of a risk assessment with that one and make sure it's only appropriate if for their texture requirements and safe. You don't want to increase risk of choking. And then some people carry their food, so they might walk and hold it and might need to be walked with and prompted to have it every now and then. But I mentioned about roast dinner and the pasta being ways that you can modify meals into still being a finger food, but also with their snacks like cubes of cheese and vegetable sticks and dips, cake slices. It's basically cutting things up into more wedge shapes in general, basically, and that just helps them still have that independence with eating as long as possible. I think our third case study with Mrs. Johnson. This is just to consolidate things we've already been discussing. So Mrs. Johnson's been wondering more, and she's struggling to use her knife and fork, and so she's getting up during her meals throughout the day, and she's got a sweet food preference. Is there anyone that you could refer to for Mrs. Johnson? Anything there that needs to be looked at by a specialist?
OT and dietitian.
I agree, yeah. For the struggling to use the knife and fork, as OT could support with the adapted cutlery.
The special cutlery that's provided for people who can't use normal knife and forks.
Yeah, they very innovative tools, aren't they? Bear with me, finding the last questions. Can't find it in here. Is there anything you can change?
Yes, provide more finger foods for her.
Yes.
And
one more time. Who just spoke?
You were about to say finger foods also, but someone's already said finger foods.
That's fine. And now she's got a sweet food preference, though. Can anyone think of any sweet finger foods?
Biscuit, cakes,
cakes with sticks on it. You could put on little what do you call them, like toothpicks on the cakes and give them to eat, so they find it more easier.
Yeah,
and fruits.
Didn't catch that last one.
Fruits.
Finger food.
We can check our life history as well.
Sweet one.
Oh, struggling. And there's some good answers coming out. I was also thinking malt loaf or like scones with some jam on them and things like that. Things that are sweet but also not a little bit nourishing as well. Excellent, thank you. We've only got a few minutes left, so I'm just going to whiz on through. Just a quick note on diabetes. They don't, as a dietitian, we wouldn't support a diabetic diet or specific diabetic foods that are like marketed as being diabetic. They can, we don't necessarily recommend any exclusions. And when someone is at high risk of malnutrition, we encourage having a conversation and adapting our aims. So rather than our primary focus being about their sugar intake and things like that, we think, okay, the risk of malnutrition is our priority right now. We need to get their weight up. So we kind of be less restricted in our diet to achieve that, because that's our immediate concern and is the higher risk element right now. And because we can also medically manage diabetes, but we can't take a pill to gain weight. Although nowadays there are treatments to do the opposite. But yeah, we can't medically reverse malnutrition. We have to just prioritize that through our diet at first. And a quick note on end of life. So I said it just to summarize really, that end of life, the end, not the prolonged palliative care, but that immediate end of life would not be appropriate for those supplements, but instead a more comfort and quality of life approach. And then, oh gosh, I've still got 20 slides. Definitely don't have time to do all those. So innocent. Everything can be put together into a care plan. When you're coming up with a name, think of what the resident is important to as well, because we can be a bit clinical, like regain 3.5 kilos. Whereas for a resident, she might want to be able to wear her wedding rings again because she's lost the weight and they're falling off. You know, just thinking about that quality of life, what's important to her. She might want to take part in chair yoga again, for example. And coming into that and being sure that you're documenting that malnutrition score, why they've got it, and any underlying causes that you've addressed, and then encompassing all their preferences and what you've put together. So those snacks, those nourishing drinks, the enriching of those meals, bringing it all together into your plan, and then trying to review it in 4 weeks, at which point you would reweigh them and then review. So if in that time they've then progressed in their condition, or they've been acutely unwell, or they're now end of life or something, for those scenarios you'd be limited in your input, and actually that explains why you've not had an impact on your care plan. So you might either want to adapt to more quality of life or acknowledge you're limited. But if you still feel like no, intervention is still definitely appropriate, then at that point you would refer on to your local services. So we've got dietitian services in some areas, and then a care home support service in Oxfordshire, and then they would be able to advise and make a clinical decision and give further support for the nutrition. They may require a food diary to show that you've been implementing a care plan for a month and providing an enriched diet. And then I've mentioned supplements a couple of times. So the position at the moment is that supplements, these are AIMS, Ensures, Outplens, Forticips. If someone started them in hospital, they can use them up, but for prescribing ongoing, for routine care, they're not supported. So if you request them, a GP would not support it, because for routine care we are recommending a food-based method. So doing all that enrichment of the diet and those nourishing drinks and the snacks to meet someone's nutrition needs, and that's for those for routine weight loss. Obviously, if someone cannot meet their nutrition needs through food, then that's where the GP or another specialist would make a decision. And hold on. And make. Sorry, I've got some background noise. Sorry. A specialist can make a clinical decision whether supplements would be recommended, but it would really, there's only a certain exception criteria are met, and that is where they cannot meet those nutrition needs through food alone. So you don't have time to go over, I think that was the main gist at the end there. In your follow-up email, you'll get given links to our resources. There are links to your local teams. And before you go today, please may you fill out this evaluation form, and that will grant you access to the certificate. of attendance, and I'm going to put the link in the chat as well for you. But thank you very much for coming. Just to summarise there, whilst you're getting out your smartphones and scanning in for the quiz. And for those that have attended in groups, I think in the chat you might have written down who has come. If you haven't already done so, that would just be helpful for us for making sure you all get your individual certificates where you might have signed up as a group. Just make sure you have written down the names of those that are attending, multiple people on one call. But in essence, what we've learned today is about identifying someone's risk of malnutrition, interpreting whether it's something you need to address or not, and then addressing the underlying causes of why they've been losing weight. We've gone through adapting your care plan for their texture needs, religious needs, dietary preferences, and making sure you're providing up to 1,000 calories a day through your nourishing drinks and snacks, and enriching your meals. And then a whistle stop at the end through the remaining care plan. It's because I did the training yesterday in 3 hours, so obviously I'm in the slow it all down. just visit down to half the time was a little bit challenging there, so sorry it was a little bit of a whiz at the end. We do still have dates available to come to the in-person training. I put the link in the chat if you can't scan the code. It's and if any of you are having trouble, I can send it over email as well afterwards. But yes, once you complete, you've got issue getting onto the link. I'll try the variation on the link on minute. I'll try that link. Oh, you're not registered. You don't have to register. Says anyone can respond and you don't need to sign in. Just try that other link for me. Just in case. And if you've got any follow-up questions, I'll be emailing you out tomorrow, later today, tomorrow, with your, or it might be early next week because I'm not in the rest of the week, but with your certificates and your resources. And if you've got any questions or want to come to another one of our trainings, then you can come to the face-to-face. It's a bit more interactive and you might learn it a little bit better. But thank you very much for attending, and you can leave when you filled in your evaluation form. Thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah. Do we need to do this individually?
Sorry.
Do we need to do this individually? The QR code, scan it and do it everyone.
Ideally,
yeah.
But if it's at minimum, definitely put the names of the people in who are in your room. Put that in the chat so I can just see on my list. And make sure, but ideally, yes, fill in the evaluation form because it helps us see if you've learnt anything.
Okay, yeah. Since we are doing it as a group, so we will type the whole names, yeah.
Yes, all the names in the Teams chat, please at minimum. Don't worry too much about the quiz. That's fine.
Yeah. Put the names of the chat.
Yeah. Of course, obviously, not everyone has smartphones while they're at work, so that's fine.
What's that? You did? No. No, like just we do the chat.
Press the chat.
Press the mic one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending.